So what does the role now look like? We've said that the function is already there, it's already happening. And different people will be taking on already different elements of that with varying degrees of success. But a role has now appeared. Probably over the past 5 to 6 years that we now term product operations. Other roles will have been called this before. So it will have been called something like program management, portfolio management, and others too. But for around about 6 years, it's been more officially product operations, and more akin to what we know, in certainly us that do this role, as what it is today. It's to facilitate and enable people to do their job as best as they possibly can. It's not about process at its core. It's not about technology. It's not about ways of working. It's not about data. It's about people. Product operations is about facilitating people to do their best work. A way of looking at this that I've always used here is anybody in the business that's hired to do a particular job. They're hired realistically for one reason. Salespeople at the lowest level, their primary task in the business is to sell the product. Okay. Marketing, they're there to advertise what we do, to get people to talk to those salespeople, to come and talk to us. Engineers, developers, at their lowest level, and it's no disrespect to them, the lowest level is write lines of code. Okay, I think we could all probably agree we could identify anybody in a business and their primary task is to do X. That primary task is what brings money, value into the business. Product operations, and actually other operations type roles around businesses, in modern businesses as well, is focused on helping those individuals do their best primary task, to unlock their time to do as much of their primary task as possible. So for product operations, we are mostly focused on how do we enable product managers, designers, engineers, product marketing even, to do their primary job and spend as much time doing their primary job as possible. Alongside that, we facilitate, we enable them to do that job. We are not here to take jobs away from them. We're there to make their own jobs, so doing the tasks, I should say, as part of their job, as efficient as possible, as automated as possible, reduce it down, remove it sometimes. But we're not there to do the jobs for them. And just in a little bit of time in a moment as well, talking about the pillars of product operations, the 6 pillars of product operations that really underpin all of this. But at the very bottom level, we are still facilitating and enabling those people. Let me tell you a little bit about my journey into product operations as well. So, as I said earlier, I've spent 10 years as a product manager across various different organizations. Then about 5 years ago, when I was a head of product at LearnLight, which was a language learning company, we built our own platform to facilitate that language learning. We decided that we needed a discipline, a better discipline of product management in particular. And so I actually moved sideways, took a smaller team and say, hey, we're going to focus on the craft of product management. We're going to look at how we enable teams to do their best work. And the product managers then went off and did their own piece. This was, for me, a very natural step. I've personally always been somebody that is very organized, very logical. I like that way that things work in a certain way, and that they can be efficient, that we can automate, that we can remove elements, that we can go from A to B to C so super quickly. And so there we started to focus on some of the disciplines of product operations. Now, at this time, firstly, this was all brand new to me, and we didn't have Denise and Melissa's book to read. We didn't have any really materials. We were making this up as we went along, to be honest with you. And I'll be honest with you, I still am most of the time as well. We really focused at LearnLight on that way of working, that discipline, that software development life cycle. How do we do that life cycle, which has already been very well established? And how do we make it better? What steps can we improve? From there, I spent about 18 months there, moved on to Cobalt, a cybersecurity company based in the States. Best job I've ever had, with the exception of where I am at the moment. Absolutely loved it. And there I was actually picking the reins up from, I would say, half-hearted approach to product operations before. They'd had a crack at it, and now they needed to re-professionalize this. And Cobalt, one of their biggest areas of, or one of the biggest issues they faced was a real breakdown in trust between the product and the product division, which I include engineers, designers, that whole tech side of the business, and the commercial side. There was a real breakdown in trust. The product team, the business was very product led anyway, but the product team really was not engaging with that commercial side of the business at all. They were not taking feedback on board, particularly. The feedback that was coming in was going into the black hole and never seen again. The communications that went out was was not really very helpful to the commercial teams in terms of, how is this useful to me? What can I now go and sell? What new things have we got to sell? A lot of time was spent on really discussing very technical issues when we were doing things like product demos or we were doing our release notes. I'll give you a great example. Not long after I first started, one of the engineers, we did an update to the business. Absolutely fantastic. Hats off to them for that. And this update was talking that saying that they'd removed something in the region of 4,000 lines of code from a particular area of the platform, and it made a page load 2 seconds quicker. Now, in some circumstances, look, that's firstly fantastic news anyway. Let's not come down on that. And in some businesses where they are absolutely laser focused on performance, that is an important piece of news. It wasn't to us. Everybody was looking at this and saying, that's great. That's a great celebration. But what can I do with this? What can sales go and do with this piece of information? We can't go and sell this to our prospects. We can't use it as a retention piece to our existing customers, because to be fair, 2 seconds in the grand scheme of things is nothing. We can't market it. So what do we do with this information? That was a whole update that was just lost. And one of the problems here as well, I talk a lot about communications, and we'll come on to a bit more of this later, is that's where trust is won and lost. And trust is such an important part of product operations' mandate, not only from the individual and the team themselves, but to facilitate trust between those people, those different departments. Because trust is something that you can build equity in. When things don't work out further down the line, you've got a great trust and a great relationship with those other teams to say, hey, the platform's fallen over. And they'll turn around and go, okay, what can we do to help? Well, should we talk to our customers? Should we put a notice out? Let's all help. Versus there is no trust, there is no relationship. And then the blame game starts. Everyone starts to rally on you. Questions start being asked about the team and their value and their competence. So trust is incredibly important, and trust is built through good communication and a variety of other things as well. In the last 18 months, I've done some stints with Oxford University. And let me just pause for a moment. Why am I telling you my backstory? One important thing here is trying to explore the different applications of product operations in a little bit more detail, as well as that every business wants and needs different things. There is no blueprint for product operations to go in and say you set this up and then you set this up and then you set this up, and in particular in that order. There are things that I have learnt, things that I will nearly always implement because I know that they work, to a business that doesn't know. But, and we'll talk about this a little bit more as well, what are our goals? What are the things that we want to go in and achieve, and in what order? Is very different in every business, and that is important to understand. So these stories I'm telling you are those different applications. When I worked at Oxford University, programs of study, not software, otherwise identical in what they needed. The biggest area that they were looking at was, hey, how do we go from A to B to C in terms of an efficient way to develop new programs? How do we do the research? How do we get that information in physically? Where do we store it? Where do we analyze it? On what cadence do we analyze all of this information? What meetings do we need to have with different areas of the business? And then we go through and develop. What does the timeline of that look like? What staff do we need to pull in from other areas to feed into this process? And then what assets do we need at the other end of this? So here, this was very much about establishing essentially a software development lifecycle in a very stage gate approach. And then where I am now at Helios, setting it up from absolute zero. So there's absolutely no element of product operations in place in terms of a role in place at all at the moment. So I am absolutely starting from zero to understand where are the problems. What have I found out in my 6 months here? Well, communications isn't great. Needs improve. Internal communications from the product team to the rest of the business needs improvement. Our process of road mapping needs improvement, has needed improvement. We don't have the information to hand. And again, we don't have that information easily available to share and communicate with the rest of the business, particularly senior leadership. Senior leadership has a real problem in understanding, had a real problem in understanding what the teams were working on and what value they were bringing. They couldn't understand why X, Y, and Z was being worked on when actually the leadership had the impression they wanted to work on A, B, and C. So I've had to really work hard to present a lot of this information, make a lot of this information available to leadership in particular, using tools that actually we've custom built in-house to make it very easy for them to find exactly what they want. And finally, documentation was virtually non-existent. So even though we have ways of working, each team has been doing something very different. And so as we are bringing in these new ways of working, these new processes, these new cadences of meetings and software that we're using, we need to write a lot of this down from scratch. I've had to rewrite a whole software development lifecycle in our Confluence platform to make sure people have a reference point of know what to look at. So that's my journey and what I've been certainly looking at. And again, why this is important is to say every single organization is different. If you are looking at going into product operations, if you are looking at hiring into product operations or transitioning within your business into product operations, then you will absolutely be doing a huge amount of discovery to understand just what do you need, does your business need, and in what order should we be looking at these things in. In the next session next week, we're going to take a good, proper, deep dive look at discovery and how we find out what these things are. Next piece I want us to take a look at is actually what are the routes into product operations in terms of roles and previous experience? So there's a Slido. I think we're going to open a Slido up now, and just what would like to spend 5 minutes to say what previous roles would you feel that would bring skills to product operations?